This is Dory Clark with Smith Executive Education. Welcome to our podcast, Take Control of Your Online Reputation. I'm here today with Lisa Chau, who is an international marketing consultant and professional. She's been published in Forbes, Huffington Post, and U.S. News and World Report. She's also a TED-Ed lesson creator with a great deal of teaching experience, and she is currently an entrepreneur who has launched a mentor matching business called Mentors Row. So she has a lot of exciting ideas to share with us about social media creation, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Content creation, everything from blogs to podcasts to videos to TED-Ed lessons, as she has done. So, Lisa, my first question for you, can you talk to me a little bit about the type of content that you create? You're a blogger, but you do a lot of things. Can you give me an overview of the type of work that you put out there?
Yes. Well, I spend a lot of time writing for media outlets such as U.S. News and World Reports and Huffington Post. But I understand that not everyone has that luxury. And I think that a good option for them to start creating content would be to write content on their own websites. On Twitter, I think Twitter is a fantastic method of creating content that goes out to the public and reaches a wide swath of the population.
Excellent. So why is creating content so valuable in the first place? Why do you bother to do this?
It's very important to create content because of personal branding. So this is something that I learned a lot about following you on Harvard Business Review. I know you as an expert in personal branding because of the things that I've read online that you've written. And for myself, I've been branded as an expert in social media, business leadership, and entrepreneurship because of the interests that I have in those areas and that I write about.
Great. So, Lisa, you were mentioning earlier, you write for a lot of well-known publications, which is a great thing to do. Obviously, not everybody can start out there. You mentioned some options for that people could write for their own website. They could put things out on Twitter. Another really good emerging example is the fact that people now can post their own blogs on LinkedIn, which is an exciting option as well. But can you talk a little bit, once people have been doing that for a while, how did you actually succeed in breaking through to some of the larger publications? What does that process look like? And if somebody aspires to do that one day, what are the steps that they should be taking?
I actually wanted to mention LinkedIn, because while it's great to have a blog of your own to write on and archive the things that you have written there for yourself under your own branding, LinkedIn is great in that, again, you will reach a much wider audience on LinkedIn, and people that might not find your website for whatever reasons would find you on LinkedIn. I still think that LinkedIn is the best professional website at the moment for making connections and helping those who don't have access to larger media outlets to build their professional profiles and really get a following through groups and just their personal feed.
Yeah, I think that's really true. So if somebody has been writing for their own blog, they've been writing for LinkedIn for a while, and they would like to start writing as you do for Huffington Post or U.S. News and World Report, not necessarily those publications specifically, but they want to kick it up a notch so that they are writing for mainstream publications. What advice would you give them? How does somebody make the transition to start doing that?
So after they have established themselves as someone who has expertise in a certain area, say business or entrepreneurship, they should approach the editors of the outlet that they are interested in writing for and pitch very specific stories. Don't just say, I would like to write for you because I'm an expert in this area. So when I was pitching to U.S. News and World Report, my co-writer and I sent in about 20 very, very specific stories tailored to the Economics Intelligence blog so that they knew going forward what to expect from us and what we were comfortable writing about. And they didn't have to think about stories for us. You really need to be self-sufficient in creating the pathway for you to write for these kinds of publications.
That's really interesting, Lisa. So, what I'm hearing is that you should do a lot of research in advance on the publication that you want to write for so that you know what they're interested in, where you can fit into their lineup, and then give them a very specific pitch. How do you actually even know who to contact or who the editor is? How would somebody find that kind of thing out?
You can either go to their website and look up the editor, or in the cases where you can go in a more indirect way is to contact the writers that you already know and follow and read and build a relationship with the writers that you like and ask them if they would be able to connect you to the editors. And again, you can also go to LinkedIn and find out who works at the publications and really connect with people who are already there, who are already writing for the publications, and see if you can collaborate with those people to reach the editors.
Can you talk to me a little bit about your process for coming up with what you write about? How do you come up with ideas or get topic ideas in terms of what you want to be putting out there for the world?
In terms of topic ideas, a lot of them come from doing a lot of reading. I am constantly reading business articles, and I have questions that I'm interested in getting answers to. So one of the content creation methods I use is, well, if I have this question, someone else probably has this question too. What is the answer? Let's do some research and write out what I found about this. What's nice about writing for the Economic Intelligence blog for US News is that it's an opinion section. So I have very, very strong opinions about a lot of different things. And it is an outlet for me to voice those opinions publicly and engage people who are reading my material to either agree or disagree with me or just further the conversation.
We've been talking about blogging, but of course there's a lot of different ways that people can create content. Some people listening to this will say, well, I'm not really a writer. What are possibilities for me? Can you talk about some of the other options besides blogging in terms of creating content, whether it might be audio or video or something like your own TED Ed lesson that you put forward?
Definitely, I think Twitter is great for people who can't commit to writing 1,000-word blogs right now. It's great in creating content, and I find that the most effective way of reaching people is to tweet during live events. And I think it's funny that when I go to technology conferences, I'm usually the most prolific tweeter there. It's a technology conference. I don't understand how other people are not tweeting. But I stand out because I'm the most vocal person in the audience. And a lot of people have come up to me to speak to me because of that. So I make a lot of connections doing that. And there's no need to arrange for a meeting. You're already in the same room. So you just find the person in the room, talk to them, make a new connection, and have someone new to collaborate with. Other examples of creating content are podcasts, for instance, what we're doing right now. And I was on a panel yesterday for the City of New York Graduate School speaking about Asian American economic empowerment. And my fellow panelist, Fiona Bloom of The Bloom Effect, was telling me how she loves Instagram because she's a very, very visual person. And I am too. So Instagram is good for people who don't necessarily want to write a lot, but they are visual and they can take photos and share those photos. And a lot of research has shown us that photos are great in terms of getting people to look at your content and share your content. People will read things just because there's a photo there. So even on LinkedIn, I had written an article and someone suggested that I add a photo to it just to grab attention that way.
That's a really interesting point. So I know that a lot of people might feel intimidated about getting started with this, that they, particularly if they're deciding to dive into audio video stuff, they might feel like, oh, it's kind of complicated. What if I need a crew, or do I need to, hire a studio? But my understanding is that things have gotten a lot easier these days. Can you talk a little bit about how people, if they're interested in pursuing some of these forms, might be able to go ahead and get started with that?
I think Facebook has helped content creation a great deal. People are much more comfortable making posts about anything really on Facebook. And it's a good place to practice because you're in a trusted community of friends, depending on how you collect your Facebook friends. So you can test out the waters there. And I would like to note that people should not get discouraged if others are not really engaging in the very beginning. A lot of lurkers are reading your content and following you, and they might not necessarily share or forward your content, but they are there and they do make a difference whether or not you know it. So if you write something great, they might share it by word of mouth with their friends or business associates, and your content will spread. You just don't know it on a metrics level.
That's a really good point, because I do hear from a lot of people that it is discouraging when you're first starting out and maybe you have 2 followers and you don't really know if it's worth it for you to keep going. And I think your point is well taken, that just because your numbers are small at the beginning doesn't mean it's not reaching the right people. And it doesn't mean that you're not making an impact. To that question, though, about how do you build a following, what is your advice for people who want to try to grow it over time? What is the best recipe to follow to increase the number of people who are seeing your stuff?
The 2 most important things to keep in mind in building a following is to produce good content. That's always a basic foundation. Produce content that adds value. So don't just repeat what has been written about 20,000 times already. Produce something original. Do your research. Make sure it's accurate. Make sure your spelling's right and your grammar is great. And there are things that people want to read. And the second item is to produce content regularly. You won't be able to have a good following if you produce content once a week and then you disappear for 6 months. So figure out what kind of schedule is good for you. Maybe it's once a month, maybe it's once a week, and make sure that your followers know when to expect new content from you and they will read it because they know it's there. If you produce content on an irregular schedule, they might easily miss it.
That's a great point. So you're talking about the frequency. I also get a lot of questions about length. How long should a blog post be? Or if you're doing, videos or podcasts or things like that, are there rules of thumb about what people's attention span is?
I feel like people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. So I write blog posts right now that are about 1,200 words. For me, that's the perfect length for reading, but I think a lot of people read much less than that right now. I think what is favorable would be closer to about 600 words, maybe even 300. I remember when videos were long, if they were 10 minutes. Now we have 6-second vines. Shorter is probably better these days to get the attention and keep the attention of people. But again, make great content and people will watch it. I still will read things that are 3,000 words, 6,000 words. As long as the content is good, I will read it, and I hope that others would too.
I think that's really important, Lisa, because ultimately it's a question of making sure that your content is the right size for what you need to say. Sometimes if you can do it in a short, pithy way, you absolutely should. We don't need padding. But if you have a lot to say and it's in depth, then you want to give it the space that it needs to share your idea. So I think that's important. Also, I wanted to ask a little bit, as you reflect back on when you first got started creating content, are there things that you wish you knew at the time, that if you were giving advice to your younger self, that you would wish to have known?
I definitely wish I had known the strategies I use now to bolster engagement. And that is, in my mind, 140 characters is pretty short. But when I actually type out things, there is space that is left over. And what I found is I can use that extra space to direct in a personalized way certain things that I've written to people I know are interested in those topics. And that way people feel special because I've thought about them. I know, for instance, that Benny Do on the West Coast is very interested in entrepreneurship. So a lot of times when I write about entrepreneurship on Twitter, I will @Benny Do and he'll see it, even though I know that he follows me regularly, I feel that that extra step makes a huge difference. And it also invites people to respond. So when I write to Sage Strategist, she will respond to me because I have addressed her. But when I was starting out, I used Twitter more as a broadcast to everyone tool. So I think that making your content personalized when appropriate is a great way to help engagement.
So this is a really important point. So you're talking about not just creating content and blasting it to the world, but also really thinking specifically about your audience and thinking about who are the individuals in my audience that I want to see this. And so when you talk about giving an @ mention, just for folks who may not be familiar with that, when Lisa has written a blog post that she wants someone to see, she will go on Twitter and write a message about it and then include that person's Twitter handle, their @ handle, so that they will specifically see that Lisa is flagging them. And that will make them far more likely to read it and check it out so that they know it's a message meant for them. That's a really great strategy. And Lisa, the last major question that I had for you, creating content is a long-term game. And as you're doing this, I think a lot of people might look at it and say, oh my gosh, how can I do this for the rest of my life? Aren't I going to run out of ideas? And so I'm wondering, what do you do to get yourself out of creative ruts? How do you keep producing content and stay fresh over time and keep yourself motivated to do it?
One of the areas that people think I'm very strong in is networking and making new connections. So when I make new connections, a lot of times the new connection has strengths in areas that I may be weaker in, and I have strengths that they are weaker in. And one of the great things about meeting new people all the time is that you can come up with new collaborations. So there's never a lack of projects that you can work on. In fact, I don't have enough time to work on all the projects and collaborations that I have with people now. My inbox is always full of people trying to follow up with me about interviews or writing stories about different topics that we have mutual interest in. So as long as you're out there and you're following the trends of your industry, there's always content to create because you can write in your own voice, you can write about your opinion, you can write about others' opinions. So I don't really see that as a problem.
That's fantastic. It's important to let people know, this message that it might feel daunting when you're first getting started to come up with the ideas and keep doing it. But once you immerse yourself in the world of creating content and being in the mix, it actually begins to come naturally. So Lisa, for people who are interested in this and want to learn more, want to see more of your stuff, what is the way that they can find out more about you?
They can tweet me. So I am at Lisa03755, or they can find my email and phone information on my website, and that is alphavert.wordpress.com.
Wonderful. Lisa, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.